You're still employed, aren't you? That's more than some people can say. Those words came out of Boyd's mouth like he was doing me a favor, like I should be grateful. I was standing there, trying to keep my voice level, trying to be professional, trying not to let him see that my entire world had just been ripped apart. 23-year-old Cade was sitting in the chair that was supposed to be mine, playing with his phone, probably texting his friends about his fancy new job title. The same chair Boyd had promised me 6 months ago when I held that offer letter in my hands. 25,000 more per year, real growth, a future. 6 months, Boyd had said back then, looking me straight in the face. I'm moving up. This position becomes yours. I need someone who actually understands how things work here. I'd believed every word. I'd called the other company, told them I was staying, heard the disappointment in their voice. That door shut forever, because I'd thought 15 years meant something. I'd thought all those times I'd held this place together, all those disasters I'd fixed, all those impossible situations I'd made possible. I'd thought that mattered. But here Boyd was, telling me business needs change, telling me his nephew brings fresh ideas, telling me I'm too valuable in my current role. And I knew, standing there with my heart pounding and my hands wanting to shake, that this had been his plan from the start. Use me for the work while his nephew gets the title and the money and the credit. What was I going to do? How does someone fight this? And why did loyalty feel like the stupidest thing I'd ever believed in? Before going any further, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here, for listening to what happened to me. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt invisible or used or promised something that vanished, please hit that like button and drop a comment. Subscribe if you want to hear how this actually ends, because what happened next, nobody saw coming. Not Boyd, not Cade, not even me when I started. My name is Nola, 39 years old, single, no family nearby. The kind of person who shows up early, stays late, remembers birthdays, fixes problems before anyone notices there was a problem. I started at this manufacturing company when I was 24, fresh out of school, believing that working hard would get you somewhere. We make components for industrial equipment. Not exciting, but important. Companies across multiple countries depend on what we produce. For the first 2 years, I did my job. I learned the systems. I watched how things worked. But I also noticed something nobody else seemed to care about. The real business wasn't happening in meetings or on the production floor. It was happening in these invisible spaces between people. The 3 inspectors at the port who could move a shipment through in 2 days or let it sit for 2 weeks. The translator who worked with our international clients and understood not just language, but culture. The retired industry expert who consulted for our biggest customers and had 40 years of knowledge in his head. I started building relationships with these people. Real relationships. I learned that one of the inspectors, her name was Pilar, had a daughter graduating high school. I remembered to ask about it. I sent a card. When her daughter got into university, I congratulated her. Not because I wanted something, because I actually cared. Pilar and I would talk sometimes about life, about work, about how hard it is to balance everything. The translator, Solene, needed 3 days' notice for complex negotiations, not because she was slow, because she researched every cultural detail, every nuance that could make or break a deal. I learned to give her that time. I learned to ask her opinion, to actually listen, to treat her like the expert she was. The industry veteran, his name was Hugo, had been doing this for 43 years. He'd seen everything. He consulted for 5 of our biggest customers, and he trusted exactly one person at our company to give him straight answers. Me, because I never lied to him, even when the truth made us look bad, even when it would have been easier to shade things. He respected that. 13 years I spent building these relationships, learning how things really worked, understanding the human side of business that nobody teaches you in school, and it saved the company over and over. When shipments got held up at customs for mysterious reasons, I'd call Pilar, and she'd help me understand what was actually going on. When international clients were upset and nobody could figure out why, Solene would explain the cultural context we'd violated. When industry regulations changed and we were scrambling, Hugo would guide us through it because he'd seen similar situations decades ago. Boyd knew all this. He'd watched me save the company 4 times in 3 years. Once, there was a situation that would have cost $2 million in penalties. I fixed it in 72 hours. Boyd had actually said to me, "You're the spine of this operation." I'd felt proud hearing that. I'd felt seen. What an idiot I was. 6 months ago, that other company made me an offer. It was perfect. More money, better title, actual room to grow. I was ready to take it, but I wanted to be fair. So I told Boyd. I showed him the letter. He didn't even hesitate. Stay. 6 months. I'm getting promoted to the upper level. This position becomes yours. You've earned it. I need you here. I remember exactly how it felt, hearing those words. Like everything I'd worked for was finally happening. Like loyalty was finally paying off. I called the other company that same day, turned them down, heard the click of that opportunity closing forever. For 6 months, I kept doing my job, kept fixing things, kept making the impossible happen, kept believing. Then Cade showed up. "This is my nephew," Boyd announced in the morning meeting. "He's going to be joining our team. Bright kid, lots of potential. I want everyone to make him feel welcome." Cade was 23. Clean haircut, expensive watch, confident smile. He shook everyone's hands like he was already important. When he got to me, he said, "Uncle Boyd talks about you all the time. Says you really know your stuff." Something twisted in my gut, but I pushed it down. Maybe Cade was just joining the team. Maybe my promotion was still happening. Maybe I was being paranoid. "Show him everything," Boyd told me after the meeting. "Train him up. He's family. I want him to succeed here." I trained him. I showed him the systems, the processes, the contacts. When he asked questions, I answered. When he made mistakes, I corrected them. I was professional. I was helpful. 2 weeks later, Boyd called a meeting. The whole department was there. Everyone was looking at me, expecting what I was expecting. "As you all know, I'm moving to the upper level," Boyd said. "It's been an honor working with this team, and I'm excited to announce that Cade will be taking over my position here." The room went completely still. Someone dropped a pen. The sound was huge in that silence. Nobody looked at me. Nobody said anything. I felt like I was underwater, trying to breathe. After everyone filed out, I walked up to Boyd, calm, professional, even though everything inside me was screaming. "You promised me this position 6 months ago. I turned down another offer because you gave me your word." He actually shrugged, just shrugged, like it didn't matter. "Business needs change. Cade brings fresh perspectives. You're valuable where you are. Why rock the boat? I gave up 25,000 more and a better position because you promised me. And you're still employed, aren't you?" That's more than some people can say. There it was. That sentence. Like I should be thankful for the privilege of watching him betray me. Plans change, Nola. He walked away. Just walked away. Like the conversation was over. Like 15 years meant nothing. Like his word meant nothing. I stood there alone in that empty room, and I made myself breathe. In, out, in, out. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to scream or throw things or do anything dramatic. I was going to think. Cade started his first day in the new role on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, he'd already caused a problem. He'd sent an email to our largest international client using casual language that, in their culture, was insulting. The client's response came back, and even through the formal words, I could feel their anger. Boyd showed up at my workspace. "Can you fix this?" I fixed it. I wrote to the client personally, apologized, smoothed it over. They accepted because they trusted me. Week 2, a major shipment got held up at the port. Cade called the inspector's office and basically demanded they hurry up. Pilar, who I'd known for 12 years, went completely quiet on our account. Boyd found me again. "This shipment needs to move." I called Pilar, apologized for Cade's tone, explained there was a transition happening. She sighed but helped me. The shipment moved. Week 3, Cade tried to negotiate with a client whose language he didn't speak. He used some automated translator and completely messed up technical terms that have specific cultural meanings. The client was confused and frustrated. Boyd didn't even ask this time. He just said, "Fix it." I fixed it. Every single time I cleaned up Cade's mistakes, Boyd would say the same thing. "See, this is why we need you in your current role. You're too valuable to move." I understood then, really understood. This was the plan from the beginning. Keep me doing all the actual work while Cade got the title, the salary, the recognition. They'd demoted me without ever saying the word. That night, I sat in my apartment, the same small apartment I couldn't afford to leave. Without that raise I'd turned down. The walls felt close. Everything felt close. I could quit, walk away. But then what? I'd have nothing. No reference from Boyd. No opportunity. Just 15 years of my life wasted. I could report him to upper management. But report what? That he changed his mind? That he hired his nephew? Nothing illegal about that. Just cruel. I could stay and keep doing this forever. Keep being invisible. Keep making other people successful with my work. Or I could do something else. I opened my personal contacts. Not work contacts. My personal list. 3 names. I'd built real relationships with over more than a decade. Pilar's daughter had mentioned last year she was starting a consulting business for import-export compliance. She'd asked my advice, and I'd given her some basic guidance, but nothing serious. Nothing that would compete with my company. Solene had told me 6 months ago she was expanding her translation services independently. She'd wanted to know which companies to approach, what services were most needed. I'd encouraged her but kept it general. Loyalty to my company. Hugo had been hired by 3 of our biggest competitors to consult on their operations. He'd mentioned it casually, said he wished he had someone like me at those companies, someone who understood both the technical and human side. I'd laughed it off. Loyalty. I stared at those 3 names. Then I started typing. To Pilar's daughter, I heard you're building your consulting firm. I'd love to grab coffee and share some insights about client relationships in this industry. I've learned a lot over the years that might help you avoid common pitfalls. To Solene, you mentioned wanting to expand your services. I know the communication approaches that work best with specific clients in our sector. Happy to discuss over lunch. To Hugo, I've always valued your guidance. I'd love your perspective on my career path. Also, I've noticed some patterns in client behavior that might interest you for your consulting work. I sent all 3 messages. All 3 responded within an hour. Yes, absolutely. When can we meet? I set up coffee with Pilar's daughter, Isadora, for that Friday. Lunch with Solene for the following Tuesday. Dinner with Hugo for Wednesday evening. I didn't tell anyone at work. I didn't ask permission. I just did it. Friday afternoon, I met Isadora at a cafe downtown. She was 26, smart, nervous about her new business. She had the technical knowledge but didn't understand the relationship part yet. I don't know how to make clients trust me the way they trust experienced people, Isadora said, stirring her coffee nervously. My mom has those relationships, but she built them over decades. How do I even start? I leaned forward. Let me tell you something nobody teaches you. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about remembering details. When you talk to someone at a company, ask about their day. Actually listen. Next time you call, mention something they told you. People don't forget when you make them feel heard. Her eyes lit up. That's so simple. Simple. But most people don't do it. They're too busy trying to seem important. I pulled out my phone. Let me tell you about the 3 companies that are probably looking for compliance consulting right now. They're frustrated with their current process. They won't say it publicly, but I've heard things. If you approach them in the next month, emphasizing personalized attention, they'll listen. I didn't give her confidential information. I didn't share anything protected. I just told her what I'd learned about human behavior, about timing, about how to build trust, things I'd figured out over 15 years that nobody had ever taught me. We talked for 2 hours. When we left, Isadora hugged me. Thank you. This is exactly what I needed. I felt something strange driving home. Not guilt, not satisfaction, just clarity. Tuesday, I met Solene for lunch. She was elegant, precise, exactly the kind of person who notices everything. We ordered, and then I asked her about her expansion plans. I want to work with more companies in our sector, she said, but I don't know how to position myself. What makes a company choose one translator over another? Understanding, I told her. Not just language, but context. When I've watched you work, you don't just translate words, you translate intention. Most translators miss that. Companies in this industry need someone who gets the cultural weight behind technical terms. Someone who understands that in some cultures, asking a direct question is rude, so you have to listen for what's not being said. Solene nodded slowly. That's what I try to do, but I've never heard anyone articulate it that way. Because most people don't notice. They just know something went wrong and can't figure out why. I paused. There are companies right now who are struggling with international relationships. Their current translators are fine with words but terrible with context. If you approached them emphasizing cultural intelligence, not just language skills, you'd stand out. I told her about patterns I'd seen. When companies make decisions about changing service providers, what concerns them, how to address those concerns before they even voice them. Not secrets, just observations from years of watching people. Solene took notes, real notes, like what I was saying mattered. When we finished, she looked at me seriously. Why are you helping me? We're not competitors, but this information is valuable. I thought about that because I've spent 15 years making other people successful, and they took it for granted. I'm tired of being invisible. She understood. I could see it in her face. Wednesday evening, I had dinner with Hugo. He was 71, sharp as ever, still working because he loved it. He ordered wine, asked about my career, and listened while I told him what had happened with Boyd and Cade. That's disappointing, he said quietly. I've always thought you were wasted at that company. You have strategic intelligence, real understanding of how businesses actually operate, not just how they're supposed to operate. Thank you, I said. That means a lot coming from you. I've been consulting for several companies, Hugo continued, helping them improve operations, client relationships, but they all have the same problem. They focus on systems and processes, and they ignore the human element. They don't have anyone like you, someone who understands that business is relationships, not just transactions. I sipped my wine. What if I told you about patterns I've noticed? Things that make client relationships succeed or fail? Not confidential data, just strategic insights. Hugo leaned back. I'd be very interested in that conversation. For the next 3 hours, we talked. I told him about behavioral patterns I'd observed. When clients start looking at competitors, what warning signs appear months before they actually leave? How to read between the lines in conversations, in emails, in meetings. How to build trust that lasts even when problems happen. I told him about timing cycles, the specific months when companies in our industry review their vendor relationships, the triggers that make them open to change, the approaches that work, and the ones that push them away. Nothing I said violated any confidentiality agreement. I'd never signed a non-compete clause because I'd never been senior enough to require one. I was just sharing professional observations, knowledge I'd earned through experience. Hugo listened carefully, asked questions, took mental notes. When we finished, he said something that stuck with me. You've just described what's missing from every company I consult for. The companies that figure this out will dominate. The ones that don't will struggle. I smiled. Then I hope the right companies figure it out. Over the next 2 months, I kept doing my job. I showed up, did my tasks, fixed problems when asked. But I also kept meeting with Isadora, Solene, and Hugo. Coffee, lunch, professional conversations, teaching them everything I knew about building relationships, understanding clients, reading situations. Isadora launched her consulting firm officially. Within 3 weeks, she'd landed her first client, a company that competed directly with us. They were frustrated with compliance delays and wanted someone who could help them navigate the system more smoothly. Isadora knew exactly what to do because I'd taught her. Solene expanded her services. She approached several companies, emphasizing cultural intelligence and contextual understanding. 2 of them were our competitors. They hired her immediately. She started moving their negotiations through flawlessly, avoiding cultural mistakes, building strong international relationships for them. Hugo continued consulting for our biggest competitors, but now he had new insights to share with them. Behavioral patterns, timing cycles, relationship strategies. He helped them understand when to approach potential clients, what to offer, how to build trust. They started winning deals they'd never won before. And at our company, things started falling apart. Month 3 after Cade took the position, a major shipment got delayed at the port. Cade called the inspector's office. They were polite but unhelpful. The shipment sat for 2 weeks. Storage fees piled up. The client got frustrated. When Boyd asked me to fix it, I called Pilar. She was sympathetic but busy. We're overwhelmed right now, she said. My daughter's firm has several new clients, and we're prioritizing their shipments. Yours will move when we have capacity. There was nothing Boyd could do about that. Nothing illegal, nothing to report, just a change in priority. Month 4, our largest international client requested a different translator. The one we'd used for years, Solene, had told them she could no longer prioritize our company. She was focused on her independent clients now. She recommended someone else, but that person didn't understand the cultural nuances. A major negotiation stalled, then it failed completely. 2 weeks later, our competitor closed the same deal using Solene as their translator. She guided them through every cultural detail perfectly. Boyd was panicking by then. What's happening? Why are we losing ground? Cade had no answers. He was in over his head, flailing, making mistakes. Boyd kept coming to me to fix things, but I couldn't. The relationships had shifted. The people who used to help me were helping other companies now. Month 5, 3 of our biggest clients left. Just left. Switched to competitors. Boyd called emergency meetings. Demanded explanations. Couldn't understand what went wrong. I knew. Hugo had advised all 3 companies during their vendor review process. He'd guided them toward competitors who had better relationship management, better cultural understanding, better compliance support. Competitors who had hired Isadora and Solene. Competitors who now had the advantage we used to have. Nothing Boyd could prove. Nothing he could fight. Just business. Month 6. Boyd called me into his office. He looked terrible. Stressed. Exhausted. Desperate. We're losing clients. Shipments are delayed. International relationships are falling apart. What's happening? We're losing clients. I looked at him calmly. I'm not sure. Have you asked Cade? He's been managing these relationships. But you always. He stopped himself. I was never promoted to handle that officially. I said, you said I was more valuable in my current role. So, I've been doing my current role. Understanding crossed his face. Slow. Like watching someone realize they've walked into quicksand. The inspector's office. The translator. The industry consultant. They all trust you. They trusted me. I corrected. But I'm not in a leadership position anymore. I'm just doing my job. The one you said was perfect for me. Nola, we need. What do you need, Boyd? Do you need me to fix everything again while Cade gets the credit? Do you need me to stay invisible while you take what I built and give it to someone else? He had no answer. The next week, Boyd tried to fix things himself. He called Pilar's office directly. They were polite, mentioned they were very busy with new clients. Did he know the inspector's daughter had started a consulting firm? Maybe he should reach out to her. Her fees were competitive. He tried to negotiate with Solene. She declined professionally. She'd built relationships with firms that valued her expertise more consistently. He reached out to Hugo for advice. Hugo was pleasant, but mentioned he was committed to several other clients now. Companies that had sought his guidance proactively, rather than waiting for a crisis. Nothing Boyd could do. Nothing he could prove. I hadn't stolen anything. Hadn't violated any agreement. Hadn't shared protected information. I'd just stopped being the invisible glue holding everything together. And I'd helped other people build the same skills and relationships I had, with companies that weren't this one. The company kept declining, losing clients, struggling with operations. Upper management started investigating. They reviewed everything: financial records, client relationships, personnel decisions. 6 weeks ago, Boyd was removed from his position. They gave him a smaller role, lower level, under someone younger than Cade. The nephew got reassigned to a junior position in a different department. New leadership came in. They called me for a meeting. The new director, a woman named Freya, sat across from me with a file folder open. She'd clearly done her research. You were promised a promotion, she said directly. That didn't happen. Instead, your manager hired his nephew with no experience. We understand you might be frustrated. I was disappointed, I said carefully. We've reviewed the timeline. When you were passed over, the company started losing key relationships. Major clients left. Operations deteriorated. We can see the correlation. I said nothing. Let her talk. We'd like to offer you the position now, Freya continued. Full authority over operations and client relations. Significant raise. Stock options. We want to rebuild what was lost. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She seemed sincere. Maybe she was. Maybe this was a genuine offer. But I'd learned something over the past 6 months about my value, about what I was worth, about what happens when you make yourself irreplaceable to the wrong people. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I've accepted a consulting position. I'll be working independently, advising companies on relationship building and operational strategy. I start next month. Freya's expression shifted. Which companies? I stood up slowly. The 3 that used to be your biggest clients. They reached out to me directly. Apparently, someone told them I was the reason their relationships with this company worked so well for all those years. They want me to help them build the same strength internally. Her face went pale. You can't! We could argue non-compete. We could. I never signed one, I said calmly. I was never given a position senior enough to require it. I was just valuable where I was. Remember? I walked toward the door, turned back. Isadora's firm has been hired by 2 more of your clients for compliance consulting. Solene is booked solid with your competitors for the next year. Hugo has quietly advised 4 other companies to look elsewhere for their components. None of that is my doing. That's just what happens when you treat people's expertise like it's disposable. I left that building for the last time, walked to my car in the afternoon sun, sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. The company didn't collapse, but it shrank, lost its advantage, lost the invisible network that had made it successful. Boyd works there still, in his reduced role, watching business flow to companies I now help. Cade is somewhere else, probably learning that a title doesn't make you qualified. And me? I make more money now than that job I turned down would have paid me. I work with 3 major companies, teaching them what I learned over 15 years, building their relationships, strengthening their operations, making them better. Isadora's firm is thriving. Solene expanded to 4 new countries. Hugo calls me regularly to discuss industry patterns and strategies. I didn't destroy anything. I didn't steal anything. I didn't break any rules. I just stopped making other people successful with my invisible work, and I started making myself successful instead. Boyd had said plans change. He was right. Plans do change. And I adapted. The difference is, I adapted in a way that built my future, instead of sacrificing it for someone else's broken promise. Thank you for listening to what happened to me. If you've ever been made to feel invisible, if you've ever had someone take credit for your work, if you've ever been promised something that disappeared, please know your value, know what you're worth, and know that sometimes the best thing you can do is stop holding someone else up and start building your own foundation. Hit that like button if this resonated with you. Drop a comment telling me your story, and subscribe, because your story matters too. We're all more powerful than the people who underestimate us realize.